Yura is the stoic figure found looking across Lake Agheel in Limgrave. As its name suggests, this lake is home to a flying, fire-breathing dragon, and Yura warns you to not pick a fight with this creature.
You do well to steer clear of Agheel Lake, fledgling. A dragon roosts there, and it's as fearsome as it is majestic. So, unless you're mad or wish to be burned alive, stay clear of the lake.
This will likely be the first dragon you encounter in your journey through the lands between, and Yura's advice on Agheel's perilous nature should not be ignored. Funnily enough, if you die during the fight and speak to Yura again, he will acknowledge your death.
You bloody half-wit. Picking a fight with a dragon.
When you return to take on the dragon again, a golden sign will be on the floor waiting for you to summon Yura to assist with this fight. It's amusing to think he was watching you struggle, and after some laughing at you, decided to give you a hand. As a side note, Yura has some of the most dialogue variations I've ever seen in an Elden Ring NPC. Depends on where you meet him, your previous steps and progress with the dragon, and your choice to summon him. Summoning him here is not compulsory to further his questline, but you will miss out on seeing Yura's fighting style, wielding a simple but very long katana. This is his signature weapon, the Nagakiba, Japanese for long fang. Yura's name, attire and weaponry all hint at a Japanese influence. Although the world of Elden Ring does not explicitly feature a place called Japan, there are references and nods to East Asian inspiration. Some are more blatant than others, varying from items with straight-up Japanese names to more subtle hints, such as whispers of a place called Land of Reeds. This is a place outside of the Lands Between, similar to the Badlands where Horaloo and Nephililu are from. The description of Yura's distinctive helmet, the Iron Kasa, references his connection to the Land of Reeds. The Kasa is a woven hat historically used to protect one from the sun or rain, or to conceal one's identity. One style of Kasa, the Tengai, was worn by travelling flute monks known as the Komoso. These monks, seeking spiritual enlightenment, obscured their faces to relinquish their egos. However, the Komoso's anonymity also facilitated something else. They were allowed to roam freely from province to province, something almost unheard of during the Edo period. Therefore, it was rumoured that the Komoso were gathering information to feed back to the government, and so the Tengai inadvertently became entwined with a tale of espionage. In Elden Ring, the Kasa that Yura wears is fashioned from metal rather than straw, but still obscures his features, much like the Komoso. Further reinforcing this association is a long, wooden, horn-shaped instrument on his belt. This is reminiscent of the flutes the Komoso would carry and play during their travels. As a final point to Yura's character design, his attire is called the Ronins set, which also carries a historical tie to the Komoso. A Ronin is a samurai who has no master. This could be for a few reasons. Perhaps they voluntarily fled service or failed to avenge their master's death. Either way, they would now be viewed as dishonourable members of society, and as a result, some Ronins would join the flute monks, becoming self-called Komoso as a way to get by. Having become masterless samurai in a time of peace, and having had to join the growing groups of flute-playing beggars to survive, like the Komoso, those Ronin did no longer enjoy the privileges and relative security. They organised themselves as sincere members of some kind of new native Buddhist movement that played their shakuhachi. It could be the possible history and culture behind the influence and what went into Yura's character design. Later in this video, we will discover whether he had someone to avenge or a cause for dishonour. After you emerge victorious from the Agheel fight, you will be rewarded with unique loot, a dragon heart. Consume a dragon's heart at the altar to make its power yours, while a terrible and savage-looking thing, the heart has a peculiar beauty to it. The description says you can harness only a fraction of the dragon's power by eating its heart. Yura can shed light on the significance of this.
The heart you brought back. It's used in dragon communion. If you should find yourself overcome by hunger for the heart, yearning for its strength, then seek the decrepit church on the little island off the western coast.
Yura refers to partaking in a sacrament-like ceremony if one is so enticed by the heart. Dragon communion. He directs you to an exclusive location where this task can be performed. However, it is not without its consequences.
You must not forget, though, those who partake in dragon communion will one day shed their humanity. Their hunger for dragon, their yearning, only worsens until the floodgates burst, unleashing eternal torment.
Yura's words hint at some sort of personal familiarity with the perils of dragon communion. The visceral wording and analogies could only really be used by someone who had witnessed this phenomenon firsthand. Biting the heart and drinking the dragon's blood will corrupt you forever. It will leave you insatiable, a thirst never truly quenched. We will return to Yura's knowledge of this information in a bit. For now, let's continue with the questline. I touched on this earlier, but you can meet Yura somewhere else before fighting the dragon. If you venture north of the lake instead of south, you may unexpectedly find yourself ambushed in the passage to Murkwater Cave. This was my first invasion, and it certainly took me off guard, especially because when an invasion starts, you are automatically dismounted. This invader is Bloody Finger Neregus, who wields a dagger and employs blood magic while clad in the regal, noble sanguine set. However, you are not entirely defenseless, as someone else also watches you. After a few moments, Yura will appear.
If it isn't Nereus, the Bloody Finger, the end is nigh. For you and your cessblood.
This will happen regardless of whether this is your first encounter with Yura or if you fought the dragon with him previously. He will always come and fight. Yura's presence here extends beyond just altruism, revealing a deeper vendetta when he reintroduces himself after the fight.
To have fought Nereus and lived, you must have seen your share of battle. I am Yura, as you might recall, Hunter of Bloody Fingers.
What exactly are Bloody Fingers, and what is Yura's relationship to them? So let's take a step back first. During your journey in the lands between, you might have picked up several finger items with different appearances, names, and uses, but the two that are relevant in this story are the Bloody Finger and the Festering Bloody Finger. The Festering variant allows you to invade, traversing worlds to challenge other Tarnished in PvP. The downside to this item is that it is consumed upon use. You can buy and find a limited number of these fingers in the world, but once they are gone, they're gone. There is a way to invade without worrying about draining your resources, and that is to obtain a Bloody Finger. If you follow Vare's quest, the white mask character you meet when you take your first steps outside, he will eventually indoctrinate you into the Lord of Blood's cult, led by none other than Luminary Moog.
Give me your finger. This noble blood will be an immutable badge of honor once it settles inside of you.
Vare appears to inject you with blood, performing some kind of transfusion. Whose blood this is not mentioned. It may be Moog's own sample, because it is referred to as having the noble quality. Glistening blood has been siphoned into the nail of this finger. Its sickly pale skin feels nothing now. The nail still aches with sweetest pain. The result of this macabre ritual is a biological mark of allegiance to Moog's Dark Covenant, your very own Bloody Finger. This will now be a permanent fixture on your body, allowing you to attempt invasions whenever you wish. The point of bestowing you this ability is that it enables you to sacrifice other Tarnished as a devoted follower of Moog's cause. Render up your offerings of blood to your lord, drench my consort's chamber, slake his cocoon's thirst, his awakening shall herald the dawn of our dynasty. Now equipped with a fingertip in a perpetual state of pleading, these aptly named bloody fingers seek out victims to sacrifice to their malevolent master. Which brings us back to Yura, the bloody finger hunter. Yura's intervention symbolizes his resistance against this insidious force, as he stands as the hunter of hunters, hence why he intervenes.
Tarnished, held in thrall by cessblood. Zealots, who stalk their own. If you stay the path, you're certain to face more of them.
Yura cryptically refers to these beings as having cessblood. This isn't a real word, but let's analyze the etymology. Cessblood is similarly structured to existing words like cesspool or cesspit, which describe where sewage collects. The prefix cess may originate from the Italian cesso, a colloquial term for toilet. So, to put it all together, cess, blood, could be a way of saying filthy blood, suggesting that those beings have been contaminated, and I suppose getting injected by a back alley surgeon with an unsterile needle straight through your fingernail, mixing an unknown liquid into your bloodstream, would understandably result in you being called dirt blood. But again, we get a hint of Yura's personal experience, demonstrating his knowledge of the bloody fingers.
Just remember, no kinship with their ilk remains. Their madness precludes it. Don't let your emotions stay your blade.
What really happened with Yura? He speaks of blood and hearts corrupting someone. And the last line, don't let your emotions stay your blade. This someone clearly meant a lot to Yura. But I've stalled long enough. Let's find out who. Yura will be in Liurnia of the Lakes the next time you meet, but it won't be a peaceful meeting. Approaching the Academy's gate, a red summon sign grabs your attention on the ground, indicating that Yura is currently in an ongoing skirmish. This will allow you to repay the favour from your ambush earlier with Nerigis. If you answer the summon, you will enter mid-fight. Yura is fighting another bloody finger, but it is a Ravenmount assassin this time. The assassins of Ravenmount are killers by trade. They assail their victims while dressed as birds of prey. Now this introduces an exciting twist into the bloody finger pipeline. Did their allegiance to the bloody fingers precede their role as a hired assassin, or did their skills lead them to join the ranks of Mohg's loyal followers? It makes more sense that they were previously employed as assassins, and because of their experience in said profession, they found a mutually beneficial relationship with joining Mohg. Their desire to kill coincides with his need for blood. This will be important later. After the dust settles, you and Yura have a moment to catch your breath.
Wretched worms, leave me be.
His muttered words hint at the relentless pursuit he endures from these bloody fingers. This also seems to imply that this assassin came after Yura, not vice versa. Talking more to him seems to confirm this.
That bloody finger was a thorn in my side. And now I'm finally rid of him.
Yura's ultimate objective remains a mystery. Is he solely focused on eradicating all of the bloody fingers? Or does his vendetta extend to disrupting Mohg's regime entirely? No. What if I told you that this was something on a much smaller scale, specifically one particular individual?
I'm dying to see you. Eleonora. Violet bloody finger.
This is Yura's true target, the one that has always been on his mind, and why he has so much knowledge of Dragon Communion and the nature of the bloody fingers in the first place.
Yes, I've been tracking Eleonora for quite some time. She is the deadliest of all bloody fingers. She's felled many an old hand already, but in spite of her cessblood zealotry, Eleonora is a proud knight.
Here we learn that Eleonora is a formidable adversary, revered as the most lethal among all the bloody fingers. But aside from the trail of bodies in her wake, Yura mentions that she was once a knight of esteemed valor. This is why I wanted to mention the Ravenmount assassin earlier. This was their occupation beforehand, but now they have elected for the lifestyle of a bloody finger. This is likely to be the same with Eleonora, once a knight at the forefront, but now predominantly a bloody finger. Allow me to skip forward a moment to the fateful reunion at the Second Church of Marika in Atlas Plateau. Yura lies, gravely injured on the ground, and after a short moment, Eleonora appears dressed in a very significant piece of draconic armor, the Drake Knight set. Now the pieces come together. Yura mentioned Eleonora was a knight. He talks of the hunger for a dragon's strength and his anecdotal level of knowledge of bloody fingers. Eleonora is the one he saw shed her humanity. This is supported by what Drake Knights really are. From birth, Drake Knights speak not a word. They spend their lives pursuing the strength of dragons for its sublime beauty and inspiration of all. Eleonora was captivated by the sheer might of dragons, and at that moment, she was determined to one day command that power for herself. Little did she know this obsession would lead to her downfall. When you fight her, Eleonora is able to cast dragon incantations, a skill only acquired through the consumption of dragon hearts, as we covered earlier. Specifically, you can see her use Agil's Flame and Grayrol's Roar, which in total demand the consumption of 5 dragon hearts to master. She may have consumed far more hearts in her pursuit, a journey marked by the addictive thrill of the hunt, the rush, and the triumphant taste of dragon essence. Yet, blinded by her thirst for power, she failed to foresee the ensuing corruption. The consumption of dragon hearts is not without consequences. Each time you unlock a dragon incantation, you will undergo a physical transformation. Your eyes now alight with a golden blaze, irises shimmering with unearthly brilliance, pupils narrowing to draconic slits. Eleonora went through a metamorphosis, echoing the very beast she sought to dominate.
The strength of a mighty dragon. Magnificent. But deadly. It's no surprise that dragon communion is ruinous.
Yura warned us what partaking in this primal act could do, because he saw it firsthand. Eleonora succumbed to the seductive promise of power, while Yura, a witness to her descent, could only watch helplessly. Perhaps he had foreseen the consequences, or had attempted to dissuade her, yet, as evidenced by Yura's previous words at Lake Agil, Eleonora was just impulsive and unable to be reasoned with.
Seems I'm forever crossing paths with hotheads like you.
She was his first experience seeing the effects of dragon communion. Her eyes, filled with noble purpose, were now ablaze with the golden fire of draconic power and the insatiable appetite to fell more dragons, the price she had to pay in exchange for power.
Fools will be fools. Fight all the dragons you like.
Yura's words resonate differently now, revealing the weight of his experiences alongside Eleonora.
That was my first dragon hunt in quite some time. Paired up with a hothead like you. It was just like old times.
Yura and Eleonora clearly forged their dynamic through their dragon hunts, but the origin of their partnership is ambiguous. They likely had a mutual respect for each other's prowess with a blade. As I mentioned earlier, it's implied that Yura hails from the land of reeds, one reason being his name. However, Eleonora's name lacks Japanese roots, like Yura, Okina, and the Inaba, examples of characters who do come from the land of reeds. While her weapon, Eleonora's pole blade, was crafted in the land of reeds, it's unclear if she has any direct connection to this region. Twinned Naginata forged in the land of reeds, chosen weapon of Eleonora, Violet Bloodyfinger. Possibly the pole blade found its way to Eleonora in the lands between, perhaps gifted by Yura, who took pleasure in witnessing her handling of it. Her mastery of the sword was such that her onslaught was likened to a whirlwind, but now her legacy is stained by the accursed blood. So what drove Eleonora to sever ties with Yura and embrace the way of a bloody finger. It's not explicitly stated, but we can guess what happened based on another character's fate. This parallel figure is Okina, who hails from the land of reeds. When Moog, the Lord of Blood, first felt Okina's sword and madness upon his flesh, he had a proposal: to offer Okina the life of a demon whose thirst would never go unsated. Okina succumbed to the allure of power and accepted Moog's proposition, sealing his fate in the process. This is likely what ensnared Eleonora, who was already susceptible to the seductive allure of draconic might. But what drove Okina to make such a decision? The answer lies in the tumultuous history of the Land of Reeds, a nation torn asunder by conflict. The Land of Reeds has long been locked in a miserable civil war, during which time it has remained alienated from the cultures of its neighbours. Little wonder that the entire nation has succumbed to blood-soaked madness, or so it is said. For context, a civil war is a conflict between two or more parties, usually to gain control of a region. In the Land of Reeds there is this internal strife, and amidst the chaos, Yura and Okina emerged, seeking refuge in the lands between. While Yura seemed unfazed by the violence, more fixated on his relationship with Eleonora, Okina bore the scars of war deep within his psyche, his descent into madness evident in the description of his weapon. The plight of Okina's disciples, the Inaba, further illuminates the devastation wrought by civil war. Head disciples of the great swordsman Okina, the Inaba travelled in pursuit of the master, who abandoned them. Okina inexplicably left his students, betraying the bond between master and samurai. His actions, devoid of sense, left his disciples alone, all whilst their homeland was being destroyed by its own people. Yet, amidst this madness, the Inaba remained steadfast in their commitment and honour. The description goes on to say they travelled in pursuit of proper deaths, won honourably through hard-fought combat. To be a white reed is to seek death, fitting for the Inaba who desired nothing more than to die by the sword. And this is what they got, although probably not in the way you're thinking. The only manifestation of the Inaba in the game is through ethereal summons conjured by the spirit caller snails. These echoes of the warrior's past show that they technically died, but are yet to return to the Erd Tree, stuck in a purgatory-like state. In their spirit forms, the Inaba know the ash of war, seppuku, a forbidden technique used by swordsmen from the Land of Reeds. Plunge the blade into your stomach to stain it with blood. Seppuku symbolises the ultimate act of loyalty and sacrifice, ensuring that a warrior's honour remains intact by taking their own life. This would have fulfilled the criteria of an honourable death, which the Inaba wanted so badly. Seppuku was widely regarded as such. Now, the exact reasons for the Inaba's self-inflicted demise are unclear. Perhaps they deemed it preferable to face death on their own terms rather than endure the uncertainty of their master's abandonment. Alternatively, they may have recoiled in horror at the sight of the demon Okina had become. If they regarded him as good as dead, they would be masterless. As such, this would constitute grounds for committing seppuku. All of this is to say that civil war can have devastating consequences, tearing apart the fabric of society and disrupting and traumatizing its inhabitants. Returning to Eleonora, we will conclude that she likely stained her blade with accursed blood simply for power's sake. Yura, once her closest ally, took up the mantle of a hunter and was the only one to confront her. As a side note, I really enjoy how the Bloody Fingers all wield weapons befitting their nefarious title. Neregis's Reduvia, Eleonora's poleblade, and the infamous Rivers of Blood that Okina wields. In design, they all bear the taint of blood magic bestowed upon them by Moog himself. They could have been unbloody previously, just good old steel, but because of their allegiance, they now appear as a grim reminder of the twisted symbiosis between wielder and weapon, where power comes at a grievous cost. But why was Eleonora specifically titled the violet bloody finger. I saw this comment in a thread discussing the significance of her title, and one person commented that it may refer to an invader type in Dark Souls 3. I researched this a bit more, and there is indeed a type of mad phantom who appears as a purple spirit. The mound makers wish only to add to their mounds, becoming mad spirits whether summoned as cooperators or invaders. These are other players who can either be friends or foes. They can help you with battle, but just as quickly turn on you. This is quite fitting for Eleonora, who was once Yura's friend, but now is a fatal enemy who invades us. Violet could also allude to the literal colour of her finger, tainted by the foul blood coursing through her veins. Mohg's blood sample could have festered and corrupted that finger the most, as it was the needle's entry point. So now she has a physical manifestation, a literal purple finger to signify how deadly she is. Despite all the darkness and chaos surrounding Yura in his quest, his final moments reveal something pure and romantic. I was purposely holding this description back until the end, but his helmet mentions that Yura kept a woman in the deepest reaches of his heart. The only female character that has been mentioned in connection with Yura is Eleonora. All of this was a quest in the name of love. That is what is implied by having someone dwell inside of your heart. It is also possible to interpret this as a platonic bond forged through their shared experiences and camaraderie. For example, let's look at the Japanese text. The word kokoro is translated as heart. However, kokoro is a nuanced term encompassing not only one's heart, but also the mind, soul, and essence. I'm not fluent in Japanese, so I'm uncertain how interchangeable it is in the context of this sentence, but if it is, then you could translate this text as Yura kept a woman deep in his mind, implying that he is thinking about her often. That does remove the romantic implication when using the word mind instead of heart. But I think heart was the appropriate word choice here. I believe that Yura does have love for Eleonora. It explains why he would be willing to put his life on the line to stop her. The confrontation at the church was not to harm her, but to free her.
Eleonora, it seems I am no match for you, but I've learned a thing or two myself. You see, I've sliced the finger off.
By severing her finger, he sought to break the cycle of bloodlust, holding on to the hope that he could restore her to her former self. His logic is somewhat salient. The finger is the source of why Eleonora has become so violent, then removing it will possibly cease this behaviour. As a side note, Yura most likely refers to Eleonora's finger when he says he's sliced it off. Some people have mentioned that Yura is referring to his finger when he says this, but I don't think that makes much sense. This is tied to the theory that Yura is secretly a bloody finger, hence why he knows so much about them, and that he learned from experience that slicing off the finger stops the corruption. However, this would contradict Yura's fundamental values of honour and integrity. His adherence and discipline to the way of the sword would make it unlikely for him to succumb to Mohg's influence for personal gain, although not impossible. Moreover, the fact that Yura possesses all of his fingers and thumbs when he speaks of slicing off the finger suggests that he is referring to Eleonora. However, that is not clarified in her character model either, from what I could see. But the outcome of Yura's desperate attempt will remain unknown, as Eleonora swiftly confronts you after he stops speaking. Sadly, I don't think this would have made a difference. If she had been injected with the foul blood, it would have infected her whole body, not just the finger where it entered. The fact that Yura tried despite this, not wanting to kill her in the process, is so bittersweet. Even when she struck him down, he didn't do anything to stop it. He didn't take his own advice that he gave you.
If she comes for you, do not think twice. You must flee. There is no shame in self-preservation. Don't let your emotions stay your blade.
Despite telling us that the bloody fingers are mad beyond reason, he still speaks directly to her as if she is cognizant. This is a genuine case of the idiom, do as I say, not as I do. As he lies dying, makes a heartfelt plea, appealing to any shred of humanity that remains in the woman he loves.
Please. Please. Eleonora. Yield to the cesspool no longer. Do not stain the immaculacy of your sword. Your flesh. Your fire.
Such tenderness and emotion, these trembling words are a dying man's request. His love, save herself, to not ruin her swordsmanship that he admired so much, to not have the blood defile her skin and body that he adored, and most of all, to not take away from her ambition, passion, and fire within her that long predated any dragon's influence. The only warmth he would feel now was his own blood spreading across his body at the hands of his lover. Yet Eleonora remained silent and unmoved, embodying the stoicism of a Drake Knight. This silence must have spoken volumes, a commitment to her role as a bloody finger and dragon killer outweighing any feelings she may have harboured for Yura. We have much support for how Yura felt about Eleonora, but nothing to say that it was reciprocated. She did feel the same. She didn't show it. She certainly didn't say it. In the end, Yura may have done it all for a love he knew she couldn't return. He did it anyway, for the sake of love.
I'm dying to see you. Eleonora. Violet bloody finger.
You made it this far. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Really hope you enjoyed another retelling of one of these underrated NPC questlines. I never expected for Yura to have such a tragic romance attached to his character. As always, please feel free to share any of your thoughts and interpretations of the information I've presented. And I also wanted to say a really big thank you, as I recently got this sent to me. This is to commemorate 100,000 subscribers, and it feels really just surreal looking at it. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Thank you all so much. I love what I do. I love telling stories. I love talking about my thoughts, my feelings on characters. So thank you, everyone. And now a special thank you to my channel members and patrons.